Hello. In this example, we're going to solve the square root of 2x plus 3 minus the square root of x plus 1 equals 0. This is a radical equation, and it's different from the ones that we've solved before. The reason it's different is because it has two separate radicals, and they're both in different terms. So that means that you can't combine them. So what we need to do is we need to get a radical by itself. The same steps are going to apply. We can solve for either one of these two radicals. It doesn't matter which one. And because this is minus here, I'm thinking go ahead and just add the square root of x plus 1 to both sides. So that means that we're going to get the equation, the square root of 2x plus 3 equals 1 plus the square root of x plus 1. This really doesn't look a whole lot better, but we needed to do it nonetheless. Notice that we have a radical by itself now. And also remember that what you do when you have a radical by itself is you take both sides to some power. So the left-hand side is going to be raised to a power, and the right-hand side is going to be raised to a power. And that power is always the index of the radical, in this case, 2. So we're going to square both sides. But notice how I'm squaring here. It's very important. The right-hand side, I'm not squaring each individual term, I'm squaring that entire side. Now the left-hand side's pretty easy. The square root and square cancel each other. You're left with 2x plus 3. The right-hand side, however, you do have to be careful with. Now I'm going to do this a couple of different ways. I'm going to first do this by what's commonly known as the FOIL method. And remember what we mean by squaring something. You multiply the base by itself 2 times. And the base in this case is 1 plus the square root of x plus 1. So that's going to give me 1 plus the square root of x plus 1 times 1 plus the square root of x plus 1. But remember, I don't like foiling necessarily, but I do like distributing. So take this 1 and distribute to both terms of the second parentheses. What's 1 times 1? 1. 1 times the square root of x plus 1. Well, 1 times anything is that anything, so it's just the square root of x plus 1. And then distributing the square root of x plus 1 to both terms here. So the square root of x plus 1 times 1 is again the square root of x plus 1. And then the square root of x plus 1 times the square root of x plus 1. Well, if you think about it, that means that it's the square root of x plus 1 squared, just like what we have kind of right here. So that's going to leave us with the radicand of x plus 1. Now notice that the two middle terms here are like terms. And square root plus a square root means that there are 2 square roots of whatever that is. And also again, notice 1 plus 1 is 2, so it's 2 plus 2 square roots of x plus 1, and then we still have this plus x here outside the radical. That's what we get. So this is going to become 2 plus 2 square roots of x plus 1 plus x. Now notice that all this was just kind of like sidebar information. So now what we've just done is we've reduced this radical equation from having 2 radicals down to just 1 radical. That's good because now we can repeat the process. Solve for the radical, square both sides, and solve. Now to solve for the radical means I need to get rid of this 2 and this x. So I need to subtract 2 from both sides, and I need to subtract x from both sides. So that's gone, and the left-hand side is just x plus 1, and the right-hand side is 2 square root of x plus 1. Now, we can get rid of the 2 by dividing. So divide by 2, and just leave the left-hand side as x plus 1 all over 2. The right-hand side will now be the square root of x plus 1. Notice that what we've done is we've created a radical equation with one radical by itself and everything else on the other side. So now I'm going to square everything. Notice though that whenever you square a radical, when you square a fraction, or whenever you take anything a over n to some power m, that's going to give you a to the m over n to the m. In other words, you can take either side to that power individually. So the numerator here is x plus 1, so it's x plus 1 squared. So the square of x is just x squared. The square of 1, after leaving some space, is 1. And then to get the middle term here, which we will always have a middle term, you're going to multiply these two terms together. X times 1 gives me x, and then double that gives me 2x. So add on a 2x between these two terms. Now the denominator is pretty easy, you just square the 2. So 2 squared is 4. And that's going to give me the square root of something squared. And whenever you do that, that gives you x plus 1. Now to get rid of the division, we just multiply by the denominator, which in this case is 4. So that's going to give me x squared plus 2x plus 1 is equal to, and distributing the 4 there, gives me 4x plus 4. And this is now just a regular quadratic equation. To solve this, I would subtract 4x from both sides, and I would subtract 4 from both sides. So that's going to give me x squared minus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. This means that we can factor this into two sets of parentheses, x here, x here. Now this minus means one's positive, one's negative, and what multiplies to 3 and has a difference of 2? Well, that's just 3 and 1. And that's good because those are the only factors of 3. Notice that because the 2 is negative, 3 must also be negative, and that means that 1 is positive. Therefore, x plus 1 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. Which, subtract 1, add 3, that means that x is equal to negative 1, and x is equal to 3. And again, we have two proposed solutions. So we must check these. So, checking. The first one, let's look at the negative 1 first. We have the square root of 2 times negative 1 plus 3, and then minus the square root of negative 1 plus 1, and we're hoping that that's 1. What's 2 times negative 1? Well, that's negative 2. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. And what's the square root of 1? 1. Good. And then negative 1 plus 1 is 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. What's 1 minus 0? 1. Does 1 equal 1? I hope so. So that means that negative 1 is in fact a solution. Fantastic. Next, let's check 3. So we have the square root of 2 times 3 plus 3 minus the square root of 3 plus 1, and again we're hoping it's 1. What's 2 times 3? Well, it's 6. 6 plus 3 is 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So we're left with 3 minus 2 equals 1. And again, does 1 equal 1? Fantastic. Yes. Therefore, both of these are in fact solutions. Therefore, our solution set is going to be -1 and 3. Alrighty. Well, I will see you all in the next video.